What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and in today's episode of the Platform Fighter and Super Smash Brothers tutorial series, we are going to be going over keyboard and gamepad input on our level select screen. So for a long time we've been able to use the mouse for our level select screen or our stage selection screen, and recently we've been able to implement keyboard and gamepad inputs for our character select screen. We're going to put it all together by allowing us to control the mouse or our cursor with keyboard and gamepad inputs on our stage select screen. So as you can probably hear with my mechanical keyboard, I can actually move around my stage select screen without any input from the mouse. And then I can also press space to pick up my coin, and then I can press space again to drop my coin. And there we go. We have a fully functional movement and coin placement mechanic from our keyboard and gamepad. So that's what we're going to be covering in today's episode. If you want to get caught up in the entire series before checking this out so you can see how we've done things like our different game modes, our match timer, our hitboxes, I'll link you to the entire playlist of the Super Smash Brothers and Platform Fighter tutorial series right here in the top right corner. If you only care about your keyboard and gamepad inputs on your stage select screen, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to watch the rest of the series to follow that. I'm going to recommend that you watch the first episode of the stage and level select screen because you're going to need the concepts and logic that we've implemented in that episode and the other stage selection episodes to watch through this one-to-one. With that out of the way, we can go ahead and get started. This is a code and blueprint tutorial series, but we are going to be handling everything in the blueprints today, specifically the stage select screen widget, as that's all we're worried about for today's episode. One other note, this is going to be extremely similar to the character select screen gamepad and keyboard inputs, but I still want to make a video on this specifically so that we can have them both in the same state. Then when we get into player controllers, we can use the logic that we have in these widgets to make this accessible on all widgets, which is something we definitely want to strive for in the end. So first things first, let's go into our stage select screen widget. So blueprints, functional BPs, widgets, menus, stage select screen. Nothing is changing in the designer view, so we can go straight into the graph. The first thing we want to do when we get into this graph is make sure that we have input actions that can be picked up by our widget. So if we go into Edit, Project Settings, go down to Input, we need to make sure that we have a left, right, up and down input for our menu. Now you can use your standard left, right, up and down inputs if you'd like, or you can make one specific to the menu. If I scroll down here, you can see I have menu up, menu down, menu left, menu right, and menu confirm. So I have everything I need in my project already from the character select screen and a few of our other menus, but if you don't, you need to make sure that you have these, that way we can listen for them. So menu right is D or gamepad left thumbstick right, menu left is A or gamepad left thumbstick left, menu up is W or gamepad left thumbstick up, menu down is S or gamepad left thumbstick down, menu confirm is 1 or gamepad face button bottom. Now we want to listen for these exact inputs, so for all of them it's just menu and then the direction, or in menu confirm case, menu and then the action. So in our stage select screen event construct, we can set up listen for input actions for all of our input actions that we want to listen for. Basically just the ones that I mentioned in the project settings there. So to do this, it's really simple. We just need to call our listen for input action node. And in here you have target, which is self because it's this widget listening to it. The action name is where we have to be precise, so menu left is the first one I've done. Then you have the event type, which is pressed, released, repeat, double click, or access. In this case, I'm just going to use press release to keep it simple. I'm going to consume input. This means other widgets or things listening to this input action won't be called when this one gets hit. It will end the input chain here. You don't need to do this, but this is how I was doing it on the character select screen. And I want to keep that similar across these widgets. If we need to disable that later, of course we can. And the callback is the event that we actually want to call when this input is pressed. So we can make a custom event by typing add event or add custom event and then calling it whatever you want. So for all of my events here and all my listen for input actions, I've called them like move cursor left, move cursor right, move cursor up, move cursor down. So first one has move cursor left, and it's setting a boolean. So we need booleans for if we're pressing each of these directions. So go to your variables and add a new variable. You're going to add a boolean, and we're going to add is pressing left, is pressing right, is pressing up, is pressing down. They're all going to default to false. And then we just have to set them in each event. So move cursor left means we are pressing left. Move cursor right, which is using menu right action name, means is pressing right is true. Move cursor up, which is using the menu up action name, means is pressing up is true. Move cursor down, using the menu down action name, means is pressing down is true. So these are our 4 trues, and then we need to also have release input actions that we're listening for. So after move cursor down, I have listen for input action again for menu left. This time though, the event type is released, and I'm calling the custom event release cursor left. In this event, I'm setting is pressing left to be false. For releasing menu right, we're calling the release cursor right event, and we're setting is pressing right to be false. Next one, we're listening for menu up release, and on the custom event release cursor up, we are setting is pressing up to be false. Lastly, here we have menu down. We're listening for when that's released, and we're calling the release cursor down event, in which case we're setting is pressing down to be false. I've added all of these listen for input actions after the one that we already have in this file, which is the menu grab coin, which is how we pick up and drop our coin to select the stage at the current time. You could put them before this or after this, after the rest of event construct if you want, but I like to keep all my input action listening together. And once you have this, we can scroll down and we're going to make 2 new events here. We're going to make a custom event called move cursor, and then we're going to override the event tick. So first things first, let's go into our behavior for moving the actual cursor. So we can right click, add custom event, and this one is called move cursor. Then in here, I'm going to add 2 input parameters. One, a Boolean for is horizontal movement, and another, a float for direction. So direction is really going to be the amount that we're moving with the direction. So basically, if it's -1 and it's horizontal movement, we're going to move to the left. If it's +1 and horizontal movement, we're going to move to the right. If it's -1 and it's not horizontal movement, we're going to be moving up. And if it's +1 and is not horizontal movement, we're going to be moving down. But direction is a float in this case because I'm allowing us to pass in a different value than 1 if we want to increase the sensitivity. So say direction is 10 instead of 1, we're going to be moving down a lot faster than if we just passed in 1. So this is going to be simulating the cursor movement. I mean, we are really moving the cursor. That way, if we decide to use our mouse afterward, it picks up from the same position. To handle this isn't so bad. It might look like a lot, but it's really simple. So the first thing we're going to do is get the mouse position on viewport. You can just literally say get mouse position on viewport. So this is our viewport when we're playing here. So it knows when my mouse is up here, and when I go outside of it, you can see that it stops showing the cursor because I'm outside of it. So it's tracking where my mouse is at inside the viewport. Now, something important that we have to keep track of is the viewport scale, because if we change the size of this window, I still have to know where my mouse is. So if I'm in the top left corner here or the bottom right, it's important to know where the scale is so that we know where we're at. We can get the scale by typing get viewport scale. We basically want to multiply these values together to figure out where the cursor is on the viewport, and then add the direction to figure out where we should be based off the player input. So if we drag off of get mouse position on viewport, we can type break to get the X and Y value from it. And the viewport scale is a scalar, it's one value, so we don't need to turn it into an X and a Y, but we do want to multiply the viewport scale by both of these things, so we can type multiply and pass in the X value, and then we're going to multiply the viewport scale by the Y value as well. Then for each value, we are going to add the direction that comes from the event. So we take the result of the multiplication and add the direction. That's what we have here. Everything you see highlighted. Then we have to determine where we actually want to move the mouse based on if is horizontal movement is true or false, because that direction doesn't tell us if it's on the x-axis or y-axis. But we can handle this with a select statement. So if you drag off of is horizontal movement and type select, and you want the standard select here, it will pass this is horizontal movement in as the Boolean. If this Boolean is true, it will use the value that's passed into the true part here. If it's false, it will use the part passed into false here. So if it's horizontal movement being true, then we want to use the x-axis. So we take our result of the viewport scale times x plus the direction and pass that into true. Otherwise, we just take the current position that we've calculated, which means the viewport scale times the x. And you can see we're doing that here. The addition goes into the true, but the pure multiplication goes into the false. We're going to do the same thing for the y as well. So you have another select statement, is horizontal movement is the index, but this time we're going to reverse what goes into the true and the false, because remember, this is checking is horizontal movement. If it's up and down movement on the y-axis, that's vertical movement, that means it's not horizontal movement. So if is horizontal movement is false, we know that that's vertical movement, which means we take the addition of the multiplication result and the direction and pass that into false. Then we just take the result of the multiplication and pass that into true. After this, it's very simple. We use the return from each select statement and make a new vector 2D. So make vector 2D, and we can pass in the x select into the x here and the y select into the y here. And now we have a new vector 2D. Now, I was just doing this to get my final coordinates. Technically, you don't have to do this because we're going to break it again anyway, but I'm staying consistent with what we saw on the character select screen. So now that we have our actual vector 2D, we can split the struct pin, and we have to round both of our x and y values here and pass them into our final mouse position. So I'm just calling round on each of these values. And that's because set mouse position takes in integer values. To get set mouse position, we need to get the player controller. So in this case, we only have one player controller at the moment, so we can use get player controller 0. When we go to multiplayer, we will have to get the appropriate player controller. But get player controller, and then we search for set mouse position. And then we're going to plug in the x rounding to the x and the y rounding to the y. And we're going to get everything you see in this event here. Once we have this event, it's very simple. We just need to override our tick function and call this function at the appropriate time. So first things first, if you don't have event tick, you can right click and type event tick and pull it up. And then once you have tick here, this is going to run every frame. And so every frame we can check to see if we're pressing left, right, up, down, and then move the cursor the appropriate amount. So very simply, we just check is pressing left, get it, pull it into a branch. If we are pressing left, we're going to call our move cursor event. We just have to pass in the appropriate data. So left is horizontal movement, and direction is basically the speed and orientation that we want to go. So we could say -1 or -10, whatever speed you want. I chose -10 in the character select, so we will keep that value for now. But you get this node right here. Now, regardless of if move cursor is called or not, the true and the false parts of the branch are going to meet up afterward. We're going to continue and check is pressing right. You could be pressing left and right at the same time on a keyboard. Now, this will just cancel out your movement, but it is something that you have the ability to do. So I'm checking both. So now I'm checking is pressing right, putting it into a branch, and we're calling move cursor. However, this time is horizontal movement is still true. Direction is a +10 instead of a -10. Regardless of if it was true or false, we go to the next one. So is pressing up goes into the branch. If it's true, we call move cursor. Up is not horizontal movement, so this is false, and direction is -10. When you're talking 2D, 0, 0 typically refers to the top left, and it is no different in this case. To go up, you're really going negative units. If you're going positive units, you're going down. And then regardless of if it was true or false, we check is pressing down, and if it's true that they're pressing down, then we're calling move cursor one more time. Is horizontal movement is false, and direction is a +10. So there you go, guys. That's everything you need to add gamepad and keyboard controls to your stage select screen. If you enjoyed this video and it helped you make a stage select screen that is able to be controlled by your inputs, then please subscribe. It does more for myself in this series than anything else you can do, and I really appreciate it. I want to give a huge shout out to all my YouTube membership, Patreon members, and Discord subscribers who supported me. Thank you guys so much. If you are interested in joining, you can check out the benefits that you get here in the top right corner or on the screen. If you ran into any problems making this work in your game, please feel free to join the Discord community. There's a link in the description, and I would be happy to help you with any problems you ran into. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.